An age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled, our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
No matter how many wars you fight, no matter how much blood you shed, no matter how much rage you loose, no matter how many demons you face, no matter how many companions you lose, no matter if our kingdom falls, I know that you will return to me in honor.
All right, how's everybody doing today? I am going to put up some art for CROM the Destroyer in the background so that we can take a look at what CROM is going to look like when it comes out next month. So if anybody can hear me in the comments, you could give me a shout out. That'd be great. I just want to make sure that I'm not doing anything that is blocking that you can hear me. So I'm just doing this short, I guess we would say, live stream to talk about the launch of CROM the Destroyer, which I was going to initially launch on the 4th of July. But after a little bit of consideration after Memorial Day, it seemed like a lot of people were offline during that holiday. Thank you, Puffy. Thank you very much. So since so many people are offline during a holiday weekend, I figured that I would roll it back to the last day of, which is the Friday before the 4th of July. The 4th of July is on a Tuesday, if I recall. So we're going to put it at the 30th of 30th of August. No, sorry. I'm going to put it on the 1st of July, depending on where you are in the world, or on that Friday. So at the end of this month, on the 30th, we are going to go live with CROM the Destroyer so that you have the entire weekend to order CROM for on that weekend. You're going to be flush on Friday because everybody gets paid on Friday, and it's going to be a holiday weekend. So I figure might as well do it on the Friday so that everybody can have a chance, not only on that Friday, but during the entire weekend. So you can take a look at CROM and hopefully order from the Indiegogo campaign where it is. Link is in the description for this video right now. If you want to go sign up on the early bird page. And if you do sign up on the early bird page, what happens is you get a reminder email when we go live, and then you get a free pinup poster with your order, which is a free exclusive pinup poster because it's only available through signing up early. You can't order it in the campaign at all. So only those people who will sign up early. So I have about 300 50 people now that are signed up early. I'm hoping to hit at least 400. So you're getting an exclusive pinup poster that somewhere around 350 to 400 people are getting, and that's the only people who are getting that poster. So I just want everybody to know that it's an exclusive poster. So you're looking at some of the wonderful art from CROM the Destroyer in the background. And if anybody has any questions about excuse me, about CROM the Destroyer or the Valiant Heroes or Thomas Valiant, anything you want to ask me, or even about my channel, you go right ahead, ask in the comments, as long as you put a question mark at the end so that I can see it's a question for me, then I will try to answer it. I'm a little long-winded when it comes to answering questions, so hopefully I will get to what you want me to do to answer the question. But anyway, put those comments in the chat, and I will see if I can get them all answered before I have to go. I plan to be here for about an hour, so I just want to talk about CROM. And as I said, it is going to be opening on the July 4th weekend. So we're talking about, I think it's the last day of June is the Friday. So it'll be June the 30th, I do believe. And so we'll be opening on that Friday so that everybody can order. And oh, Sound Engraver's here. Great. Great to see you, Sound Engraver. So I'm just talking about CROM the Destroyer, and we're counting down to, I guess, again, where you are in the world depends on where you are. It's 30 days to begin the campaign for CROM the Destroyer. And I have some new art, which I've been showing on Twitter. Everybody is really actually liking this new art because it's from Chapter 2. So I have Jim O'Reilly doing the Chapter 1 for CROM the Destroyer, and we have Nick Axe, who is doing the Chapter 2 for CROM the Destroyer, and they're both working on those right now. So by the time we're done of the waiting for this 30 days and we're ready to go with this campaign, we should have almost half of the book done. And a lot of it's colored already, although none of it's lettered. I'm going to have to get the first couple of pages lettered, and we'll get hopefully Eric Weathers to do that. I did give him a heads up, so hopefully we'll get at least the first pages that we're going to be seeing on the Indiegogo page lettered, so you can take a look at the story as well as the beautiful art. But as I said, we have two artists, and I'm going to tie them together because they're both going to be pencilers and pencilers only. The inking is being handled by Mike Gustovich, who is an old Marvel and DC hand. He's worked on Batman. He's worked on the New Mutants. His actual, I would think, for me anyways, the greatest thing that he did for Marvel was when New Mutants began. He was the inker on that book. But he has done also penciling on his own. But yeah, he worked on, excuse me, the Avengers, New Mutants, Batman. I think it was some Thor. He did some Conan the King. So, you know, he's an old hand. He's a great inker, and he's going to tie all the pencils together with the two artists so that it has a similar feel, even though we have different artists, because we have the inker who is overlaying the entire thing. He's a joy to work with, by the way. He also created his own indie comics back in the day in the 80s with Justice Machine and a few others. So I love working with Mike, and he actually is doing the pencils for the Rampaging Thor, which is one of the stories in the Valiant Heroes graphic novel, which again you can order right now on Indiegogo. I should have put the link for that in the description, but I forgot to do so. But because Shadow Bait, of course, by Indiegogo. But anyway, he did that. He has the entire 22 pages done. We're getting those inked right now. In case anyone's wondering, we're on course to ship out the Valiant Heroes somewhere around the last of summer, early fall. I'm hoping that we're going to get it printed in the first 2 weeks of August and start shipping in the second 2 weeks of August. So we can rare up for Thomas Valiant #2, which Renzo Rodriguez is going to be starting really soon. I'm working a little bit more on the script right now. What I was doing while I was waiting for this is working on the script for Thomas Valiant 2. So a lot of stuff coming up. I have some things which I'm going to be publishing with other companies, which I can't talk about yet until I get the okay from the magazine. So they're going to all be part of the Fourth Age universe. So if you want to follow any of those things, I'll be talking about them on my Twitter and probably posting some things about them on my YouTube channel as well. Okay, let's see if we have some questions here since I've been rambling. Let's see. Buffy says, after CROM the Destroyer, what's the next story for the Valiant Heroes? Okay, so yeah, next, as I said just a moment ago, the next story is Thomas Valiant #2. It is going to be a little bit shorter than Thomas Valiant #1 because I think Thomas Valiant #1 was 80 pages for the complete story. But Thomas Valiant #2 is going to be, I think, about 66 pages for the main story. And then we have a backup story, which is a 22 page, which is, again, going to be, we are hoping to get Mike Gustovich to do the pencils for that as well. And we'll see about who's going to do the inking for it. It's a backup story for Thomas Valiant, the 22 pages part, which is at the end, is a backup story for when he was young, and has calculator in it and a lot of the characters that you would see in Thomas Valiant #1. So that's what's new for that universe. And I am, as I said, working on the script right now and sending it to Renzo. And he's working on character designs. We have a couple of characters. One of the characters, who is Marion Hood, she is known as Artemis. She is actually going to be part of the 8-page backup story that's in the Valiant Heroes #1, if you ordered that book. And it's, as I said, going to be shipping out end of summer, early fall. So she's part of that, but she doesn't appear in that 8-page backup story. Let me just re-up this clip here. She doesn't appear in that 8-page backup story in her superhero costume. So I'm getting Renzo to design the costume because he's a wizard at designing really simplistic costumes that just look good. And so that's what's going on with that. I know that's a big old long explanation, but yep, we got plenty coming up. And as I said, that's for the Thomas Valiant universe. I have something else in the works with CROM the Destroyer to try to get a story published outside of the CROM the Destroyer campaign, although we're looking at possibly having that story, which is a text story with a couple of pieces of art, as having it as a perk for the CROM the Destroyer campaign. So you should be able to get it there, or if that magazine gets published in time, I might be just selling some of those magazines, maybe just putting my signature on them, and you can order them straight from my campaign. We'll see about that in the next 30 days. A whole bunch going on. Besides that, I am hoping, no word as of yet from anyone directly. I just talked to Peter over at Alterna Comics very briefly, and thinking maybe I might get some short stories published in, it came out on a Wednesday, which won't involve any of the characters that you've seen so far, but will tie into the history of the Thomas Valiant universe. So it'll be set back in about the 20s, I think, 1920s. Anyways, so yeah, a lot going on. Let's see. Eddie says, yes, CROM. Definitely. CROM the Destroyer. That's what we're here for. That's what I'm talking about, because we're ramping up next 30 days for CROM the Destroyer. You're going to start seeing a lot more art. And I'm going to post as much as possible on my Twitter without spoiling the story for anybody. And I'm going to post, I think, about every second day, I'm going to post something new for the art on my YouTube channel, in the community section as well, even though you might have seen some of it in my Twitter feed if you're following that as well, which is, by the way, RJ of the Island is my Twitter handle, in case anyone wants to follow me there. Let's see. Tony says, have you ever read, no, 2000. So 2000 AD magazine, which I wouldn't say I've read the magazine. I've read the Judge Dredd stories out of the magazine. They're collected in other formats, so I haven't read those magazines at all. But if you're looking for, well, those magazines or their successors, which you have out right now, they're nowhere near the, I don't know, impact that they used to have. But again, a little shout out for a magazine that is an up and comer, and looking like it might be something of that caliber. It is Iron Age magazine. They just finished their Indiegogo campaign, but you can still, I think, order it through Indiegogo there. It's in demand. If you want to go over and take a look at that, they have pre-sold their #1 issue. So Iron Age magazine by Anvil Press, I think it is. So yeah, that's the kind of magazine that we want, and that's going to harken back to those great kind of magazines like 2000 AD. So let's see. Philip says, "Hey RJ in the chat. This book is going to be great. I truly hope so. I'm getting great artists. And speaking of great artists, there's Jim in the chat, Jim O'Reilly. He is the artist for most of the art that you're looking at right now, except for the cover and those black and whites of the Demon Girl. That's Nick Axe. He's doing chapter 2 and has already done the cover, as you can see. Let's see. All right. And Philip says Renzo rocks. He indeed does rock. Renzo, I keep on saying this and I mean it. I just 100% mean it. He is an early John Byrne, George Perez. He is going to be of that caliber of an artist. And I think as that famous an artist in 20 years from now. And I'll be saying, yeah, I used to know that guy, but he's left me far behind. Hopefully, we'll be on the same level at that time still. But, I think he is really, he's a great guy to work with, and he's a beautiful artist. I love his clean art. And he's just raring to go all the time. And as much as I can possibly do it, I'm always going to have something for Renzo to work on. Renzo is just finishing up the very last page of the Valiant Heroes for his part of the story. He's doing the inking. He's already submitted the pencils for all the pages. And the last 3 pages he's inking up right now. I think he's on the last one. So after that, as I said, he's moving straight on to Thomas Valiant #2, with a little break in between, doing a couple of character designs for me for Artemis and the villains for Thomas Valiant #2, who are, let me see if I can think of them off the top of my head. They are a twin pair called Black Kite and Red Wing. So they're very much, we'll say, 80s, late 80s, I don't know, X-Men villain kind of thing. Anyways, let's see. Yes, Philip, to answer that question, I think I just did, but I'll do it again. Valiant Heroes is coming along great. We are still waiting on, let's see, like I said, Renzo is finishing up the inks for the last 3 pages. I think he's on the last page. We have to get some more of that colored, about half of it, because the first half's already colored, and then get it lettered. The Rampaging Thor, which is one of the other stories, 22 pages. It is fully penciled. Mike Gustovich did the pencils for that, and I have an inker right now working on the inks for that. He's going to be sending me those inked pages within the next week. And we have the main story, which is the Valiant Hero story, which is basically following Pulse and Feral, and a bit of Disc with the other characters still in the background. That is being held by, drawn by and inked by Martin Stevenson, and he's about, I don't know, 9 pages from the end, because he likes to pencil and then ink all together instead of doing one and then continuing on to the other. So we have, and I talked to him just this last week, and he said, yeah, we can meet the deadline. And the deadline is the middle or end of July, so that the 1st of August I can start getting things ready for printing. So let's see if I missed any of the questions here. Buffy says, You're probably aware, you probably answered this, but before, but who is my favorite superhero? Well, again, I had said this in my last live stream. My favorite superhero, honestly, would be Wolverine, but quite honestly, it's more Logan. And it's not him as a superhero, it's him as the character Logan. I don't know, but it would be Wolverine. That's the character that I followed uh, religiously almost when I was growing up and buying comics. Anything that had Wolverine, of course, they were getting me. They were taking the money out of me. Marvel was, because anything that had Wolverine in it, I would buy it, and they knew that. Everybody that loved Wolverine would buy anything that had Wolverine in it. Unfortunately, that character is pretty much dead to me now because of what Marvel has done to it, and really, I would say dead anyways because of all the Krakoa stuff. But yeah, that's why I have several characters in the Valiant Heroes Fourth Age universe who have traits of Logan and Wolverine. You have Kit Fox, of course, who everyone says this looks like a clone that is a mashup of Wolverine and Batman, which it is, because I'm taking my cue from the old Amalgam universe where they did that exact thing. They took Batman and Wolverine and smashed them together, and they got a new character called Nightwing, I think it was, or a Nightclaw, something like that. Anyways, I did the same thing, but it came out with different results, So, and if you're wondering, the Logan part of, so he would be more the superhero part of Wolverine. But there's another character. That character would be Pulse, who is very much the Logan character, as in his way that he acts and all that kind of stuff. If you hadn't picked up on that by reading Thomas Valiant #1. So let me re-up here one more time. The CROM art, because that's what we want to see, is the CROM the Destroyer art. Let's see. All right, so Tony has another question. Any thoughts about doing a Western comic? Not, no, not really. Honestly, someone asked me that. I don't know if it was you, Tony. Last time I did a live stream, and I said I don't think I could, but I really thought about it after that, and I would say, yeah, I probably could do a pretty good Western comic, and it's not totally out of the realm of possibility, even being in the Thomas Valiant Fourth Age universe, because Crom the Destroyer is in the Fourth Age Thomas Valiant universe. You'll see a connection between those two stories just by artifacts and things that exist within them. There's never going to be any changing of one kind of character meeting another, but there's artifacts that appear in Crom the Destroyer that also appear Thomas Valiant #2, even Thomas Valiant, or the Valiant Heroes #1. But yeah, where I was going with that was putting in a Western story. That wouldn't be out of the question. But I don't know what kind of story I would write with that, but it's really, yeah, a possibility. I just watched a couple of weeks ago, while I was not feeling well, I watched the original 310 to Yuma, which I always thought that I had seen before, but after watching again the original, that was a beautiful movie. That is a very, if you ever have the chance to watch the original 310 to Yuma, get a copy of it, watch it. It's a great Western. That's the kind of Western that I would love to actually do, something like that. Who knows? Maybe I will do that in the future. But again, it starts off 310 to Yuma, that is, starts off really slow, and you think that it's not really going anywhere and it's meandering, but it's not. It's building suspense and it's building pressure. It's a spectacular movie. Anyways, let's see, scrolling down, people congratulating Jim on his beautiful art, which I fully endorse. Let's see. Sound Engraver has a question. Will you ever need a music composer for future media projects? While I do electronic music, I know how to make good themes and can explore great libraries for traditional instruments. Yes, I probably will. I'm actually considering, see, for Crom the Destroyer, well, let me put it this way. I'll start at the beginning. For Thomas Valiant #1, I did my own preview video, which was like 6 minutes long, which was way too long. The only music I had in that was, oh, what is it? Because it has to do with one of the characters, the Panzer song. But anyways, it was way too long, and I needed something much shorter. So I did a short video for the Valiant Heroes, which I only had black and white art for, and it didn't involve any music at all. But it was still around a minute and a half, almost 2 minutes. That was too long still. So if you're here at the beginning of this live stream, you saw both of my short videos, trailers for CROM the Destroyer, and I'm starting to get into my groove with those. One of them has music, which I got from a site which just has free music to share. But I'm hoping to do a third trailer for CROM the Destroyer, one that's even shorter, because the first one is about a minute. The second one's about 35 to 40 seconds. The third one will probably be even shorter than that, which probably won't have any music in it either. But yeah, I love doing these short. I would love to direct something much longer, but I can only do a short one. That's all the time I have, and the music does impact it. So yeah, Sound Engraver, I would love to have you on board if I ever get into um, much more depth with getting those trailers out there, which I'm hoping to do. Again, that's in the future. So I never. The funny thing with me is that when I go to create these trailers, it's not like my writing for the scripts for the comics at all. The writing for the scripts for the comics is just, it's laid out, and I know exactly what I'm doing. I got to hit these points. But when I make the trailers, it's, what do I have available to me? What can I use? And how can I take that and lay it over top of the art that I have? So it's much different process. All right, so scrolling down, see if we have any more questions. Jim says Wolverine is his favorite as well. Yeah, you're probably like me, Jim. You knew Wolverine in his prime when he was a great hero. Puffy says, would you call CROM a hero in this story? Yes, indeed, I would. I know that my Duck says, hail the fourth age. Hail, Duck, how you doing? But I've said this on live streams probably more than a year ago now. I think of Conan as a hero. Um, and I think that Robert E. Howard created him as a hero. He always, certainly Roy Thomas and John Buscema, they thought of him as a hero as well. When you read their prologues and things like that, they talk about him in heroic fashion and use the word hero. Um, and I would say again, Robert E. Howard saw Conan as a hero as well, just a flawed hero. Um, there's a lot of times where he gives him very heroic attributes, things that you would never think of in a Conan character, especially when people think of Conan today and how rough and tumble it is. I mean, you think about Queen of the Black Coast. I think it was Clean. No, was it? Which story was it? There was one story. Oh, I think it was the Slithering Shadow. That was it. Where he talks about Conan. He gets into this city, which is sort of deserted, with this woman. They're basically fleeing. They're the last two survivors of a army that got slaughtered. So it's him and this woman, Conan, that is, and they're going into this lost city, and they find this other woman there who wants Conan. But Conan, Robert E. Howard describes Conan as saying, basically, he has a, how did he describe it? What was the word he used? A decency to him that would not allow him to abandon this woman to go after this other woman who's completely beautiful and that he wants, but he won't do that. And it's not Conan thinking these things, and it's not one of the characters expressing it. It's Robert E. Howard as the narrator expressing this about the character. So I do see Conan as a heroic individual, starting off with flaws and certainly indulging in those flaws at times. But I always look at the character in the terms of the history of the character and where he eventually ends up becoming, which is that he ends up becoming a lawful good king. And, you know, there's plenty of times, again, in Howard's stories, where he's given the chance to abandon his people, or they'll kill him, or they'll, you know, torture him, do all these things. And he says, no, I'm not going to abandon these people, even if they don't appreciate what I'm doing for them anymore, I'm not going to abandon them. So he becomes a heroic character at the end, heroic king, if you ask me. And that's the pattern, again, that I am going to be using for CROM the Destroyer, which is my book. And again, I'm not taking Conan specifically and recreating or using that character, I guess. I'm recreating a similar character with all of the Celtic myth stories that Howard used to build that character, which I would say would be Connor Moore and Lou of the Long Hand and a little bit of Oisin, son of Theon thrown in there. Um, and I probably Con of the 100 Battles as well. So a lot of these characters, because I would say I read when I was a kid. I read all of those things when I was growing up. Probably the same as Howard, because those stories and the books that I read them from were from the late 1800s, just when I got a hold of them. So yeah, those are heroic characters, but they're heroic characters in a Celtic way, which may not always translate word for word to what we're used to with a character, a heroic character right now. But again, I want to bring that those two things together in order to show the heroism of this character, um, even though he does have to be, yeah, I don't know, barbaric at some times. So yeah, he is a heroic character. Give me 1 second to re-up. Wait a second, that's the wrong one. Re-up this art, and I will see if there are any other comments. Because I'm sure there are. Now I lost my place. Okay, give me a second here. Da 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 da. Okay, there's the CROM question. Okay, let's see. Western would be interesting to see. Indeed, it would. Oh, I meant to say, um, I'm probably going in the opposite direction in the next couple of books. I would love to do a Western. It would probably be something that would have a more French feel to it. But honestly, I'm introducing the character in The Valiant Heroes of Artemis. She's in the 8-page backup story. She appears again in with Cardinal, who is the woman in red that I keep posting about, and is, I think, the main the top picture for the Valiant Heroes Indiegogo page. But anyways, those two characters appear again in Thomas Valiant #2. They play a much more significant role, and I'm hoping to do an Artemis story, which is a book in itself, probably in a manga style, because the 8-page backup story was handled for the Valiant Heroes of Artemis and Cardinal. Was handled by a manga studio that I got a hold of, and they did great work. But I want to continue on with that vein, because their backstory basically is they're not set where everybody else is set within the Valiant Hero universe. That is to say, the Valiant Heroes and the rest of the other superhero groups that you saw in Thomas Valiant #1, which were the Legion of Justice, and the Marvelous. That's in Rubicon City. Cardinal and Artemis are basically stationed out of Japan in Tokyo. So to give it a manga feel, I'll probably go with a manga studio or a manga artist for that book. And again, I'll probably publish it in both formats, hopefully, anyways, as a North American comic graphic novel and as a manga, which I might even put it in so that we can flip it the manga way that you read manga, and all that kind of stuff. I'd love to do that for those characters, mostly because I just started writing a story about this character, and I just took off with this story. It just it enraptured me, and I am caught up in writing so many other things right now, but I'm trying desperately to do them and get them done so that I can go back and write that Artemis story, because it's only half done. But yeah, that's where I want to go more in the future. Let's see. Jim says, I have horror Western comic idea for RJ. All right, Jim. Well, I'd love to hear your idea. We'll get CROM done first, and you come to me with that idea, and then we'll see if we can get that moving as well. Tom is here. Let's see. I think he's scrolling down just a little bit. Let's see. Tony, I'm just looking for questions. Sorry, I'm scrolling down reading. Tony says, what are your thoughts about Solomon Kane? Solomon Kane was never the top story or the top character that I wanted to read when I read comics, like, um, in the 80s, 90s, when I was collecting comics and collecting a lot of things, even reading the stories of Solomon Kane from Robert E. Howard directly. It wasn't something that I would go to as my top thing. But now, quite honestly, I love, um, I won't say love, I'll say appreciating that character more and more. And I think there are some strains of Solomon Kane within CROM the Destroyer. Certainly, some kind of, if you wanted to think of it more in terms of, I don't know those old Celtic characters that you keep talking about. Well, it would be a mix of the characters of Robert E. Howard, of Conan the Barbarian, and Solomon Kane, because I think both of them have good traits. And Solomon, in his way of interacting with the world, is much more directed. Even though both characters are wanderers, he's much more directed in what he has to do, whereas Conan's wandering around and always having in the back of his mind that he's going to become a king. So I think Solomon Kane has that much more of a direction to him, and I think that's what I brought with me from that character to Crom the Destroyer. So yeah, you'll see strains of that in the story as well. All right, scrolling down. Let's see. Student of God says, will he pray to Crom? Well, that's the thing about Crom. You got to watch out for him, as Howard describes, and even honestly, because Crom is a old deity from Celtic myth. But yeah, you don't want to pray to Crom. uh, you bring down some kind of unfortunate events upon your head, but we'll see. You'll have to read the story to see the interaction with these characters. So that's one that I can't answer too much because I want you to read the story and see how that question plays out. All right, so Oz says Crom looks good. I love Conan. That's great to see. Oz, great sage. That's exactly, again, what I'm going for in the visuals. Again, the funny thing is that with the visuals for Crom the Destroyer, again, a lot of people are saying you're just taking this from Marvel's Conan. Well, no, I'm not. The funny thing is that Marvel's Conan, if you look at the works of Barry Windsor Smith, and then after him, John Buscema, you can see, I can see anyways. This may not be the case. They have never said this publicly to my knowledge, but there are, again, old Celtic myth books from the 1800s that have beautiful art in them. And I think both of those artists, being Barry Windsor Smith and John Buscema, took their cue for what Conan they were going to create looked like in the Marvel Comics from two very specific characters within those old paintings or old illustrations in those Celtic mythology books. So that's what I'm bringing forward. Quite honestly, we get to see a young, my character, I just call him King because he's the king. You'll notice in the promo material he has a crown, and in the second trailer he talks about the king. I just refer to him as King, just for brevity's sake. But within that character, again, you get to see him in his younger form as well as this form that you're looking at right now with the beard and the mustache. One of those forms looks very much like Barry Windsor Smith Conan. It's because Barry Windsor Smith Conan looks very much like Lou of the Long Hand. In the it's almost it's an uncanny resemblance, quite honestly. So much so that I would say that Barry Windsor Smith probably copied off of those 150-year-old illustrations to create that character. And again, with the older form of King, it looks like Connor Moore. Again, old black and white plates for this character. If you see Marvel's Conan the King, that looks like Connor Moore from, again, 150 years ago in the illustrations given for that character. So again, I think John Buscema might have lifted that from those books as well. So, I'm going back to the source material, and hopefully if you love Conan like Oz does, you're going to love CROM, and it's going to give you a similar visual feel. I always like to do what I call visual coding. That is to say, I want you to be able to pick up on these things and say, it's a shorthand for this is the kind of character they are, this is how they're going to act, and I'll build on that to make the character mine as we go along through action. That is quite definitely the way we go. There is a little bit of lull in some of the story, but 80% of this book, just like Thomas Valiant, is action. So and action that has purpose and meaning and has a lot of depth to it in the character development. So not just random throw them all together, everybody's in a battle action. No, there's character development through this action. So Jim O'Reilly says, I see Conan as a hero of circumstance. Well, he definitely as a younger man, he is a hero of circumstance, to be sure. I completely agree with that, Jim. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's say Oz says, my favorite growing up were Robert E. Howard's for fantasy and Frank Herbert for science fiction. All right. See if we got any other questions. Have you ever read Farford and the Grey Mouser? I probably am pronouncing that right, but that's always the way that I was told that it was pronounced. So Farford and the Grey Mouser, yes, indeed. Great characters. I love their interaction and the way that those characters and that world exists. Though the main villains for Farford and the Grey Mouser were they were spectacular. If you ask me, I love those kind of villains. And when Marvel put out their Farford and the Grey Mouser, it wasn't a one shot. It was a mini series of graphic novels. I think there was 4 of them. Could have been, I don't know if there was 2 or 4, but anyways, it was a mini series that was more than one. It was a series of graphic novels. Mike Mignola, I think, did the art for it. I loved that book. That is one of my favorite books of all time. That's outside of Marvel and DC continuity. Love that comic. And I've talked to many different artists over the last year and a half, and they all tell me the exact same thing. They love that book. Some of those artists have that book or a copy or some copies of it always on the side of their desks as inspiration. Great book, beautifully written. The art keeps up with everything that those characters are. I fully recommend, if you ever get the chance to read it, to do so. And right now, quite honestly, too, I've been buying a lot of back issues from my local comic shop and getting some of the very old Walter Simonson Farford and Grey Mouser, which were published in a book called Sword and Sorcery. I think that was the name of the book, which is an old DC comic from the 70s. So, yeah. Again, whenever I get my hands on anything that has to do with those characters, it's great. There's something I have on Twitter. I meant to do it today or yesterday, but on Friday I posted an old D&D Art of D&D book that I came across when I was going through some boxes. It's old beaten up D&D book, probably from the 80s, and it's basically just art. And quite honestly, I meant to post some of the art from that, and I probably will on my Twitter within the next couple of days. But there is a beautiful painted picture, full page of Farford and the Grey Mouser, which really, I think, if I remember correctly, was my introduction to those characters through that beautiful piece of art. It was in a D&D book. And yeah, love those characters. I'm sorry if I went off on that tangent way too much, but yeah, love those characters. Let's see. Going down. Thank you very much. Sound Engraver says shorthand approach to visuals is a great idea. I tried to use that with with Thomas Valiant #1. A lot of people said your characters are derivative, and I would say no, my characters aren't derivative. My characters are visually cued so that you see in them another character that you already know, you know their powers, so that we can start, bam, right there with the action on page one. I don't need to take 20 pages and bore you with explanations of backstory or anything about how they got their powers or how their powers work. You know from the visual cues that this is probably how their powers work. And if they work slightly differently from that mindset that you have, I'm going to put it in the story so that you can, again, through the action, figure out what the difference is. Because again, you look at Thomas Valiant, you know from page one, literal page one, where there's a fight happening, that he is a character that is something like Mr. Fantastic or the Plastic Man. But you get into the end of the book and you see him sort of as a gelatinous cube. So, you know, I try to mix those things up. I, again, give you that visual cue to begin with, and then within the story, within the action, I'll give you some twist on that character so that it starts to become mine, and really the universe starts to become something on its own. That's exactly what I love to do with stories. That's my prompt. Again, if you ever follow Iron Age, um, I guess it's Iron Age Media, that have the Iron Age magazine coming out. Actually, it's coming out, but they have it on Indiegogo. Anyways, they do these things where they put writing prompts up every once in a while. My writing prompt, quite honestly, I can use many things, but I find the best thing is that I read a story that I truly and honestly love, and it ends badly. And I'm just disappointed with it. So, what I do is I take that story and I write a good ending to it, what I would see as a good ending to it. And then when I'm in the process of doing that, I start to make the characters my own, and there starts to be a character development that I see would work in a better way. And once I get to the end and write it from usually the last chapter or the last third of whatever the story is, then I write that new ending. I want to go back at that point and then rewrite the beginning so that I can make the entire thing whole, and it gives me a new story. So yeah, I love doing that. That's what I do, and that's how I take these characters that, again, I love Marvel and DC. I used to, anyways. I don't anymore, but I'm so disappointed where they have gone, and I started to be disappointed and disillusioned with them back in 1996. And that's why I took the sort of amalgam universe idea, which I think came out in 1996, and just said, okay, well, what would happen if something like that were to happen? Marvel and DC got smashed into one universe, and it's now 30 years later, and they stayed that way. And they were smashed together for these 30 years. And now we have the descendants, the proteges of the characters that got formed within the smashing together of those two universes, in an amalgam type smash up. What would these look like? And that's what the Valiant universe is. That's what Thomas Valiant and his characters are. So, yeah, love doing that. That's where I go with this. Let's see. I'll see if I can get some more questions here. Tony says, "What are your thoughts on Ehrlich?" It's it's air. I again, I'm probably pronouncing it completely wrong. Elric, El, yeah, it's Elric. Again, not a character I am too familiar with. I've read stories, and I know I have some really old, oh, I can't remember what they are. They're magazines. They're not Conan magazines, although he did appear in I think, some of the Savage Sword of Conan. So I did read some of those stories, and the Robert E. Howard ones are they Robert E. Howard? I can't even remember. But anyways, they appear alongside Conan in, if I remember, Savage Sword of Conan magazine, excuse me, magazine, and also in another magazine. I can't remember. It's sci-fi. Uh, I can't remember. I have some of them. I could pull that box open right now if I could get up. But again, uh, I want to read more about that character, but it's not something I'm terribly familiar with, except for what I've read. Again, and I can't speak to that character as to the fact that I don't know how much of those stories that were published by Marvel, and the other comic companies actually follow the original character. So I don't want to mess up the two. I would be talking about the comic character. And again, I think Walter Simonson did an Elric series as well. So yeah, those are the ones I'm familiar with. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Scrolling down, see if we got anything else. Ta-da. I have a question from Tony, but I'm not sure what exactly he's referring to. So I'm going to continue on. Sorry, Tony. Let's see. I honestly, Oz, I only get to read very little these days, and the stories that I'm drawing off of are mostly stories that I read so long ago and are just becoming reacquainted with. So I'm not. I was always the comic book guy. I spent literally every last cent that I could on buying comics um, growing up, and so if I was introduced to characters, they would be through comics mostly, and then I would go into other mediums and try to find things for them. But again, those would be secondary, and if I didn't get introduced to them through the comics, I probably wouldn't have heard of them or really got too invested in those stories. It's like the Shadow. I got introduced to the Shadow through the Shadow comics, which I didn't particularly like too much, but it did get me to go see the Shadow, the movie that came out. I don't know, it was probably 1989 or something like that, which then got me to go to my library. And back at that time, you could take out records, and I went and got the Shadow radio plays and listened to those on record and all that kind of stuff. So that's the kind of thing that I would do with media. If I was introduced to it through the comics, then yeah, I probably would. But if not, then then I won't have a whole lot of information on it unless, one of my siblings actually read the stories like Dune, and then, prompted me to go and try and read these things or explain the entire thing to me. Let's see. All right, scrolling down a little bit. Okay, so it's about 10 minutes to the end of the hour. So I'm going to wrap up since I don't have any more questions. I'm going to wrap up by talking about CROM the Destroyer again. Um, as I said at the beginning, if you weren't here for the beginning of the live stream, the reason why I wanted to do this stream today was because I've changed the date for when CROM is going to go live on Indiegogo. I've changed it to the Friday before the 4th of July, which, if I remember correctly, is the 30th of June. So it will be that entire long weekend. And yes, I know the 4th of July is on a Tuesday, but I'm hoping that I'm hoping that you all have all the way from Friday through to Tuesday off. You all deserve it for the 4th of July. Hopefully your employers give you that much time for the 4th of July. So, or if you're in Canada, the 1st of July, I guess. But yeah, I decided to open it up on the Friday before the 4th of July for the long weekend, so that it can be open for the entire long weekend. Again, I was online looking at how much activity there was on Memorial Day, and there wasn't really a lot. So I know that everybody's going to be out in their backyard with the barbecue on and a beer in their hand on the 4th of July, watching fireworks, everything else. So to open it up on the 4th of July is a bit unfair to everyone. So I figured I'd go back and do it a couple of days earlier than that and give everybody the chance. And hopefully everybody's going to be money in their pocket on the Friday and ready to have some fun and ready to have a good 4th of July and look at the manly story of CROM the Destroyer and look at that and go, yeah, that's the kind of story I want right now. Again, especially after June. We were going to go through all of June, and it's going to be, oh my sweet merciful heavens, why do I have to get put through this torture of every last company trying to effeminize me? Yeah, and then we'll get to the very last day of that, and I'm going to say, hey, you want something manly? You want a manly story? After all of that you've gone through over the last month, come on, take a look at CROM the Destroyer. And we're going to go right up on Indiegogo, and that's going to be available for everyone. So again, I'm going to start posting that information a little more. I started posting it on my Twitter today and in the community section of the YouTube channel. My video for Saturday, again, I'll be going over very briefly at the beginning of my video so that everybody knows this, what's going on and that change that's been made. But I just wanted to get this out here as well, because I do get a lot of people listening to my live streams. The majority of people listen to the live stream after I've done it. Usually, the majority of my subscribers usually listen to my videos during the week. They all tell me that they just put me on while they're doing something, because I never really have visuals except on very rare occasions where you have to look at the screen. But anyway, so yeah, CROM the Destroyer, the long weekend of the 4th of July is going to be going live. That's less than 30 days from now, and you have that 30 days intervening to sign up on the early bird page if you haven't done so already. Signing up on the early bird page will give you that reminder email the moment we go live, and it will get you a free exclusive pinup poster that only you can get with signing up on the early bird page. So you'll get that with your order. And it is, again, CROM the Destroyer poster that you're going to see nowhere else. It's not going to be available on the campaign itself. Only through signing up early can you get it. So sign up early so that you can be reminded when CROM goes live, and you're going to be right in there. I meant to ask, okay, I'll throw this out here for the chat, for everybody who's there. So I was thinking to myself, there is a threshold that I usually need for these comics to actually, well, not make some money, but to pay everybody. I don't pay myself. I don't care. I just want to write. But to pay my artist, pay the colorist, to pay the editor, everybody like that. So there's a specific target that I have to reach, and I would probably be publishing most of these books in some format, anyways, even if I didn't make that much money. But I was thinking to myself, what does everybody think about the idea of, it's basically, if I hit those four, I guess if I hit 400 backers, it's great, but that's really what I need in order to get over the hump for what I'm paying for the production of these books. So I was wondering if it would be a good idea to have an incentive that for those first 400 backers, they get something extra. And it's only for them. Again, something that you can't get in the rest of the campaign. And it would be, come on, if you come early, you make sure that you get it in time, then you get this extra thing. I don't think I will be doing that with CROM the Destroyer. I thought about it, but again, I'm not entirely sure if I could. But what does that say to everybody? Do you think that would be a good idea? Would it be too much work? Or would it even be something that would generate not sales, but people backing it in a, I don't know, a faster fashion, anything like that? Would it give you more incentive to buy? I guess that would be the question. So yeah. Oh, I meant to say as well, I have to get going because there's also going to be another map available with CROM the Destroyer. There was a map available with Thomas Valiant #1. One of the perks for this is going to be a map as well. Haven't posted anything about it because I'm going to have to get on that, just like the cards for Thomas Valiant #1. I had to do those myself. I used the art from Renzo mostly, and then created them myself because I just couldn't get anybody to do them. I really couldn't. And the map that I had done for Valiant Heroes #1, again, the guy did it for me, but I had to, he did the bare bones for the map, and then I just tweaked it over and over and over again and put all the art in and made it much more my own than his. So I figure I'm going to try my hand at doing the map myself because, again, I have I guess you would say, in my experience as a researcher, I dealt with maps every day, not just the interpretation of maps, but I was actually considered an expert. I was called to testify in court at one point to give my written testimony, anyways, because I was an expert in map interpretation. Um, so yeah, I figured I'm going to try that myself and to get that map going. It's of course going to be professionally colored and all that. I'm going to take some of the art again, like I did with the original map for Thomas Valley #1. I'm going to put that around the boundaries, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you're someone who loved the idea of a map and you want a map for Crom the Destroyer, a fantasy map, you're gonna get it. So I'm gonna go back up and answer some more questions, even though it's been an hour. If anybody had any extra questions, let's see. Da-da-da-da-da. Oh, here's a good question. Ultima versus Knightly Virtues video when? Ah, well, honestly, I did tell someone, and so already, I think it was on Twitter. So this is not new news, but there is a bit of Ultima in the world building um, effect of Crom the Destroyer. Not so much in the characters, a little bit maybe, but I love Ultima. So yeah, one of the things about Ultima and its virtues is that. Well, they're not traditional virtues, and Richard Garriott didn't really like the idea of traditional virtues, and so he came up with his own. But really, they can be broken down into the historic virtues. And I honestly have to say, because playing Ultima, that game, I probably wasted more time on. Well, not wasted. It was a beautiful game to begin with. It really fell down in what is it, 9 and 10 or 8 and 9 for Pagan, and in the last one. So yeah, then those if you're looking at a corruption, though those games were corrupted not so much by the people who made them. There was a little bit, I'd say, there about the corruption of virtues there, but it was more because of the ownership by the companies. But yeah, um, I never thought about doing a video really about that, but maybe someday. I got too many things. They just pop up with the stupid things people are doing with comics and media right now. Who's a better king, Cull or Conan? I would honestly say Conan was a better king than Cull was. Uh, Short and sweet answer to that. I would say Conan, but I again, I have read so many of those stories, and I need to get back and reread some of the Cull stuff in order to refresh my mind. But going off of memory, yeah, I'd say Conan. Let's see. Scrolling down. Da-da. Oh, someone saying they didn't get notified. Jones didn't get notified about my live stream. Unfortunately, that's YouTube. I did post it on Twitter as well, but what can you do? I can only do as much as YouTube will allow me. Can you tell us about how you developed the dialogue? Conan has a very distinctive voice. Conan speaks. Well, here's the thing. What, there's so many versions of Conan as well. Whether you're going with the original Robert E. Howard Conan, or you're going with DeCampi Conan, or you're going with the Robert Jordan Conan, or the Marvel Comics Conan, which would be, but what's his name? I can't think of it off the top of my head, and I'm always talking about him on Twitter. But anyways, each of them has a distinct voice and a distinct way in which he speaks. The Robert E. Howard Conan speaks amazingly little. And the thing is that the funny thing with Marvel Comics Conan, especially the old great comics for the first run of Marvel's Conan, because it's the only one that I really have any use for. It There's a lot of dialogue in those compared to older stories of Conan. A lot of dialogue. He does have a unique voice, but again, um, it is something that I would try to incorporate into my story as much as possible. That he has a unique voice in an archaic way, but at the same time, you have to work within the limitations of how much you can put into a dialogue balloon and whether or not it can be understood very fluently by the reader, especially when they're concentrating so much on the beautiful art. So I got to take all of those things into consideration. And sometimes I have to take out the archaic language in order to convey exactly what is being said. That being said, again, I have written a story of this character. It's only about 5-6 pages. It's a short story, which is going to be published in a magazine. I've already gotten the okay for that. I can't say who it is with right at the moment because I talked to the publisher. He said not yet, but if you want the original voice and very much a Robert E. Howard voice of description and thinking and speaking, yeah, you can either get that perk, which this story will be available as a perk with Conan, with CROM the Destroyer, and also in that magazine format. So yeah, you want that original voice, that's where you can go to. Again, I'm so long-winded. Sorry about that, everyone. Scrolling down. Let's see if there's any other questions. Samurai Jack. I watched Samurai Jack when it was first coming out on television. Yeah, it was a funny show. And I can't remember the original show with the the Scottish fellow with the magic sword. I just bust a gut watching that. That was a great show. The new one that they did, I haven't really seen much of the new one, but the old ones, yeah. It's that kind of idea that I think again that there is a tiny bit of that incorporated into my fantasy as well. You have Samurai Jack walking towards a forest where there's skulls and it has a big sign saying "Keep out," and he just keeps on going. It's that kind of character. Anyone else would see the skulls and see the sign saying "Turn back," and they would turn back. No, Samurai Jack just keeps on motoring right into the forest. So yeah, that's the kind of character that I want to write with my fantasy stories as well. But Primal, no, I don't think that I have run across that. Let's see. Yeah, I loved that Samurai Jack episode. I think I made my college roommate watch it, sit down and watch it. It was like, you gotta watch it. Anyways, all right. So again, CROM the Destroyer opens on the long weekend of the 4th of July, which is starting on the Friday, which is the 30th of June. So if you want that free pin-up poster and the reminder email when we go live, then sign up on the early bird page. The link for the early bird page is in the description of this video. So I will have to leave it there. It's getting fairly late. I want to thank everybody for coming, and I will be trying to do at the very least one live stream per week, probably on a Wednesday or a Thursday, maybe Tuesday. I'm not entirely sure, but I would say Wednesday or Thursday, up until CROM the Destroyer is released or the campaign goes live. So if you like my live streams and you want to see more of them, then look for those on the usually the Wednesday or the Thursday night. All right. I am going to leave the last word to my CROM the Destroyer trailer, and I want to thank everyone for showing up here and participating and asking me questions, because that really gives me something to talk about during these live streams. So thank you, everyone, again. And link for the early bird sign up page for CROM the Destroyer is in the description. So here is the first trailer for CROM.
An age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars. For out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled. Our heart has returned, and the world will burn.